Markets continue to look for certainty. We continue to look at the potential fiscal cliff fallout and what it means. Joining us from Dallas is Ed Butowsky, managing partner with Chapwood Capital Investment Management. And here in Washington, D.C. in our studios, we welcome Mark Levine back again, Pacific radio host. Ed, let's start with you. First off, there's some confusion here because the markets seem that thought that there would be a deal. We're now just a couple days or a few days out. Congress is going to come back into session. Are investors wrong to think or expect that there is going to be a deal done by the end of the year?
I don't know if they're wrong or not. And, you know, what's really happening is stock prices are very inexpensive in the United States. I mean, stocks should be 27% higher than they are. They're 17% undervalued, and they should be 10% overvalued. And the reason they aren't as high as they should be is because of the policies of this administration, the fear of the fiscal cliff, and so many other things that are not clear. So as a result of that, people all around the world need to know that stocks should be higher. They're not, and they're going to go back and forth. But a lot of computer trading is controlling that right now. But guys like Mark, who believe, you know, that where the left comes from and, you know, where the liberal thinking comes from, thinks that everything's just going to be okay, and it's not. And as a result of that, we are seeing this volatility that we have today.
All right, Ed, I'm going to bring in Mark into the conversation here, and Ed brings up a good point, but I want to also follow that up with another point, is that for most Americans and most international folks watching, they're not going to say, well, the Republicans are to blame or the Democrats are to blame. They're going to blame everybody here in Washington, D.C., aren't they?
Actually, the polls show they will blame the Republicans because this is, at the end of the day, this is Speaker Boehner's choice. And he faces a very difficult choice. It reminds me of Shakespeare's Hamlet. He either has to do what the vast majority of the country wants, the Obama plan, which is supported not just by the vast majority of Americans, but by the majority of senators and the majority of people in the House of Representatives. All he has to do is let it come to a vote, boom, it passes, fiscal cliff vanishes. Or he can do what a minority and maybe even a majority of Republicans want, the Tea Party faction, and that is go over the cliff, just say no to government. And it's fascinating to see him because he may lose his speakership over this, but I think at the end of the day, he'll end up doing the right thing.
Guys, I'm going to try like heck here to avoid politics because we want to get to the bottom of this as to what's going to happen next. So, Mark, I'm going to start with you. What's going to happen come the 1st?
Speaker Boehner's going to meet with his caucus Sunday night. I think what he's going to do is he's going to tell them, look, there's only one deal that will pass. That's the one that's on the table. And I think we should do what the vast majority of the country wants or we'll be blamed. His caucus will either say yes or no, and then he can have a choice on Monday. Monday's the day to watch, December 31st, whether he decides to allow it to come for a vote or not. If he doesn't allow it to come for a vote, we go over the cliff. If he does allow it to come for a vote, we don't.
Ed, do you agree?
I don't necessarily agree with how that's going to play out, and obviously Mark and I don't agree on many things, but I believe at some point the president is going to stand up and lead. He's going to bring a deal that's a small deal. It's not going to really do much of anything. It's going to avoid, you know, the increase in taxes and the increase in spending, you know, that would happen as a result of the fiscal cliff. We would then kick the can down the road. We hear it over and over again. The debt ceiling will eventually, you know, have that debate a couple of months from now, and we're just going to have more of this nonsense over and over again, and more countries around the world are going to get sick and tired of the United States. I'm already sick and tired of the United States, and I live here.
Ed, I want to ask you, there's been a lot of talk on the sidelines that perhaps both parties can handle the fact that we go over the fiscal cliff, we start January fresh, and then Congress, lo and behold, votes for a tax cut. Is that possible?
Yeah, I think so. In fact, I have absolutely no problem going over the fiscal cliff because we have to get our house in order. This country is run, you know, if we were literally a small business, we'd be run out of business the way we run our balance sheet. So we have to do something.
Let me get Mark in on the conversation. Mark, I want to ask you a similar question. Basically, is it possible that perhaps politicians are okay with the fiscal cliff and going over it?
I don't think any of them want it as their first choice, but many of them prefer the fiscal cliff over compromise. And the question will be whether the Republican Party recognizes the results of last month's elections or not. I do think, though, a mini deal is possible to deal with some of the difficulties, the alternative minimum tax and other things, unemployment insurance. But the fiscal cliff itself may have to wait till January.
The last word, a quick word from each of you for our international audience who looks at this, essentially they consider it a mess. Give me 10 seconds and explain why we can't fix this.
Democracy is messy. And we have many different factors here. We have a House of Representatives that doesn't represent the American people because the lines are drawn by the Republicans in power.
Ed?
Well, I mean, I only have 10 seconds to explain the world. All I can tell you is The Republican Party needs to they need to hold true to exactly what they're doing, because we cannot have the liberal policies that we have now. And Mark is right. The president won re-election, but that doesn't mean his facts are correct. He just won the election. Conservatives must hold their ground. We must get more conservative in this country.
Respect democracy, Ed.
All right, you two. Thank you very much for a lively conversation. Thank you again.